In this video, we'll take a look at generating in-app notifications. And those in-app notifications will be generated through JavaScript, but it's JavaScript that can be configured through the front end. So let's take a look. Hello and welcome to this video, and this video is the fifth and at the minute the final video in this series that I'm doing on JavaScript in model-driven apps, but it's JavaScript that can be configured through front-end configuration records. And in this video we're going to take a look at in-app notifications, which I think are a really useful tool within model-driven apps or within a Dynamics 365 app. They need to be turned on in settings, but once they're turned on, then you can start generating these in-app notifications, these little toast notifications that can provide your end user with useful information when something happens on a record. And you can also provide a link to the record in the in-app notification, allowing the user to go straight to that record. So very useful, and it is driven by JavaScript, but as I say, it is JavaScript that can be can be configured through front-end configuration records. So if I go into my settings area, we can see the record that has generated that little notification. And if you watched my form notifications video, this is very similar idea. You set things up, you apply your condition, and it is at the minute only one condition. There's no way of being able to do fancier and or logic. It's just one single condition. And then you set up your in-app notification as to how you want it to display, and that's it. So first couple of columns on this, apart from name, then are table and source. The table is the table that you want this to run on. So the notification, this one is being generated from the inspection table. So you put in the inspection table's logical name. As I've said before in the other videos, I am looking at trying to use maybe display names. Once I get these videos out, if I come back and maybe have a look at user interface rules, but at the minute this needs to use logical names. The source then is the logical name of the field, and then what operator you want to be applied to that field or column. So contains data and value is then the value. Value should be locked for contains data or does not contain data. Yeah, so on the form nodes, okay, I need to look at that. And then obviously if you put in something like equals, then you have to put in a value. Recipient then at the minute will always go to the record owner. I have plans in the future to maybe extend this to other options, but at the minute these notifications will just go to whoever the owner of the record is. And then you set up what you want your in-app notification to look like. So you give it a title, you give it a body, you select the icon, you select the priority, and you select whether it's timed or hidden. Timed means that it will display in a little window on your screen whenever it's generated. Hidden means that it won't do that, and it will just pop into your notifications list. So that's how that gets set up. What I'll do now then is we will take a look at a few demos as to how this can work. Okay, so let's take a look and demonstrate this in-app functionality. So here we are on the inspection form. We have the quality review column here, and if this contains data, then I want to generate an app notification. So if I change this so I can trigger a save, I'm not getting an app notification generated. That's because I already have one for this condition. So I don't want to keep spamming the same notification over and over again if this record is being updated, but that the condition is being met that would normally generate the app notification. The way I'm doing that is by pulling Microsoft's own out of the box app notification table. So the app notification table is this one. So I'm in Fetch XML Builder in the XRM toolbox. And we have this app notification table that holds all the notifications. So I'm checking against that table in the JavaScript code that we'll see shortly. And it's basically looking, is this going to the same person? Is the title of the notification the same? And has it been sent in the last 24 hours? If they all match, then don't generate another app notification. Now that's fine up until a point, but if I dismiss this notification, so it's gone, and if I go back and show you, if I execute the query again, that record is gone, which means, of course, that if I change this and save, then I'm going to get that notification back again. So if users are constantly dismissing their notifications, which is they probably could do, probably will do, then you're still going to get those notifications generated, which probably isn't ideal. I think what I would need to do is, off the back of generating these in-app notifications, is have a custom login table and then pull that table to check that if has the notification been sent in the last 24 hours to the same person for the same record with the same title, something like that, or the same notification good, something like that. But at the minute it's pulling the app notification table, which I appreciate isn't ideal, but I think I want to try and mitigate users being sent the same notification repeatedly, which I think would defeat the purpose of it, because what would happen is that users would just end up ignoring the sidebar, which is the complete opposite of what you want to happen. It's like sending emails through Power Automate, for example, to end users. It needs to be used judiciously and carefully. So with that being said, let's move on to a couple of other notifications then. So if I go back into my settings and into in-app notifications, what I've got then is I've got a couple of inactive ones. So let's take a look at this record. So this one's going to run on the enforcement action table, and it's going to be against the court reference number, and if it equals ABC123, then we should get a notification being generated. I've just changed things slightly here. The icon will be warning rather than info. The priority is high and the toast type is hidden. In other words, it shouldn't pop up in a window. It should just go straight into the sidebar. So if I activate that, then that record is now active. And if I go into application, into enforcement actions, and then this record, and if I just set that to company, that should be enough, and click save, then there's the notification being generated. You can see the little number above the bell, but it didn't pop up in the window because this is hidden. And then there's the notification. And again, there's the warning icon as opposed to the info. Now, what I'm going to do is back into settings, and I am going to have another one back into inactive. I have another one set up here where I can just change the name to 102 rather than 101, and then that should trigger another notification, this time with a failure icon. The priority should be normal, and this time the toast type is timed. In other words, it should pop up in a little window. So let's activate this one. Okay, and that's activated. Back to application, back to enforcement actions, into this record, and changing this to 102 should trigger the 102 notification, but it shouldn't trigger the ABC123 court reference notification because we already have that. We still have that in our sidebar. So if I save that record, then there we go. And because it's timed, we get it pops up for a few seconds. And then it'll go into the sidebar. And there we have that again with the failure icon. Now, a quick thing that I don't understand how this works or what priority does. In my understanding, this is a high priority, this is a normal priority. So the higher priority I thought appeared higher in the sidebar. In my testing, that doesn't happen. If you know what I'm doing wrong or what's going on, it might be maybe in the JavaScript I'm not setting that setting correctly, but in my experience, whether you set the priority to normal or high, nothing different happens. If this is a high priority notification, which it should be, then it should be higher up in the sidebar. That was my understanding of how that functionality works. If you know different or you know what I'm doing wrong, you can let me know, please. So, but that's the notifications. That's how they generate. In terms of upgrades, I always talk about upgrades in these videos. Definitely needs to be tested. It needs to be tested with choice columns. I don't think choice columns would work very well. Dates would need to be checked as well properly. But again, you've seen it generating, definitely with a few upgrades and a bit of testing. I think this is really, really nice functionality. And again, could be with the configuration side of things, it opens it up to be used by more people on the partner side and potentially some people on the customer side, like the other examples in the other videos in this series. But what we'll do now is we'll take a look and we'll get in and we'll have a look at the JavaScript code, which is the other side of this that's making this work. So there are two pieces of code that we're going to take a look at. One piece of code then runs on the application side, so on the end user forms. So for example, on the enforcement action form or on the inspection form. The second piece of code then runs on the in-app notification form and helps to validate the values that are going into that. A lot of this is just setting fields to be business required or locked or unlocked. There's also validation going on in the table, and if you've seen any of the other videos, you will have already seen how that works. But validate the table and validate the column name. It has to be a valid column name on the validated table. Okay, so let's go into XRM Toolbox and into Web Resources Manager, and let's take a look at this. So this is the JavaScript that runs on that in-app notification form. Again, as I say, basic validation, setting default values, setting required fields, that sort of thing. But one thing I do want to highlight then is the call that validates the table name. And that's a call to xrm.utility.getEntityMetadata and then pass in that value. If the value then returns metadata, then it's a valid table. If it doesn't return metadata, then it's an invalid table. The column name or the source check is very similar. So it's xrm.utility.getEntityMetadata, pass in the table name and then the column name, the value that's in that source column. And if it returns metadata, then we're fine to continue. Else, if it doesn't return metadata, then it's not a valid column name on that table, and we pop an error message. So that's the in-app notification form. Most of it, as I say, is just basic validation. Far more interesting then is the JavaScript then that runs on the end user forms, and this runs on the onSave event. You could probably run it on the onLoad or the onChange of a form, but I just run it on the onSave. That's why I had to make a change to the record, so then I would prompt the save, which would then execute the code and potentially generate notifications. So we pass in the execution context. From the execution context, we get the form context. From that, we get the table name or the entity name, the record ID, and the owner ID. I then set up the fetch XML, which is then used along with the xrm.webapi.retrieve multiple records API call to pull that in-app notification table and bring back the results that we want for the table that we're on. We then cycle through the results if we get any, and we then do the duplicate notification check. And that, as I've already discussed, is where I go off and check the Microsoft's own out-of-the-box app notification table. Is it the same person? Is it the same title? And has it been sent within 24 hours? If it has, then don't send it again. Else, you're okay to send it. So the way that works basically is this returns then return result.entities.length equals 0. What that means then, if this is equal to 0, then return true, else return false. So that's returning a true or false. That true or false then is used here, and if it is true, then we check the notification rules. Basically continue with the JavaScript, else we don't. The check notification rules then looks at the operator, whether it's equals, contains data, does not contain data, and then based on the check, the field value versus the value. So there you go, there's an equals, contains data, the little exclamation mark meaning does not contain data, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Then if that equates to yes, to true, then go ahead and call send notification, where we actually send the notification itself. So we set up the owner record and the owner ID and the record ID, basically strip off the curly braces from the beginning and the end. We call a few helper functions to set these values for toast, priority, and icon to the values that we want, and then we build up our notification record data, which will then be used with an xrm.webapi.createRecord call to app notification, again to that app notification table. When that record is created, then Microsoft's functionality will take over and it will send the app notification out to the user. So I, again, as I've said in other videos, used Claude AI to help write this code. But in this particular instance, with regard to being able to put together the notification record, Claude AI just wasn't really getting it. Now that more than likely was down to my prompts. I maybe wasn't being explicit enough about the notification that I wanted to send, because in the Power Platform there are other different types of notifications. So perhaps I just wasn't being correct, but it wasn't working. So Ryan, a developer colleague or former colleague of mine, helped me with this, and I also, after a bit of Googling, found this website, tldr-dynamics.com, and this article in particular, which was very helpful. And there you can see there's the in-app notifications. As I said, that needs to be turned on in your settings before you can actually receive any in-app notifications. And then there's the code, which I basically plagiarized for myself. And this website is from Ty Corcoran. So Ty, thank you for your code. He also has a whole framework here on toast notifications, which I'm definitely going to take a look at. So yeah, so that is how you actually send and create those app notification records, and then obviously ultimately get them in your sidebar on the front end. And this little bit, then that's how you're getting that link in the notification back to your record, which I think is absolutely essential. I mean, you really need that in the notification, so you can be taken straight to the record. Okay, so that's the code. That's how that works. If you have any questions or any queries about the code, do let me know, because I appreciate I don't go through it line by line. I kind of just focus on what I think are the important parts. If you do have any queries, let me know, and then we'll just move on to some final thoughts. Okay, so that's it for this video, and indeed for this series so far anyway. Maybe in the future I'll do a few additional videos in this series on configurable JavaScript if I think of anything else to do, or indeed if anybody watches this video and sends me a few ideas of what I could do, maybe I'll take a look at that. But for now, that's it. I really want to thank you if you've got this far and watched this video, and if you've watched all the videos, then thank you. I really appreciate it. Any comments, any feedback, please do let me know. Not exactly sure what I'm going to do in the next series. Maybe do document management, maybe do plugins with AI. Not sure yet. But listen, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Cheers. Good luck.